This is going to be a bit of a lengthy video, but I think it's important that I do this, okay? You're going to get a little bit of a history lesson that I think most of you know. I want to thank Truths Media for a lot of what you're going to see here, and I'll provide the link to their full video in the more. But I'm going to take a lot of what they done in their video. I'm going to put it in your face, and then I'm going to steer you down a different road when it comes to UNESCO. Everything Truth Media has done here is great work. It's all truth, every last bit of it. Okay? But when it comes to UNESCO, United Nations, UNESCO's, NWO, it's so broad that it's not funny. And I'm going to show you how UNESCO, United Nations, through NWO, has divided the genders. Okay? And I can't show you it all in this one video, but I'm going to give you examples in your face from the rise of the feminist movement to the destruction, division between the men and women that's caused the war, that's led to TFL, that's led to incel, that's led to the fraudulent men going their own way, and more, okay? It's also going to show you how UNESCO, and I've known this for a long time, is directly responsible for bringing sex ed into the elementary schools, where they want to teach children as young as 5 that it's okay to masturbate. Yeah. Where they brought gay into the schools, elementary kids, teaching them it's okay for Tommy to be with Billy, and Billy to be with Joe, and Joe to be with Terry, and on, and Margaret to be with Sue, and Sue to be with Peggy, and on and on and on. As they destroy the morals of our society, they destroy the foundation of our society, all for one world government. Okay? There's just so much here, but I'm going to stop with this rant here that I just gave you. I'm going to play this. I'm going to intervene in a couple spots during the video that you're watching. And then I'm going to show you things that are all interconnected to the video that Truths Media has put up. Every last bit of the stuff I'm going to show you at the end of this video all goes into this. Every last bit of it. Done by the very same entities for the same goal. NWO. That being said, watch up.
Just a few blocks down from where you can find the moment that Grand Master of the Cathedral-like Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, Benjamin Franklin, handed off the Masonic Kleenex to Brother George Washington, immortalized on a corner. And even fewer blocks from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia sits the Independence National Historical Park. The complex includes the Liberty Bell Center and Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America were both debated and signed in 1776 and 1787, respectively. If you go there today, you will notice these are no longer first and foremost held as symbols of American liberty and freedom, as earlier generations were once taught in school.
What are the bulwarks of our past, upon which our society has been built? There are many. Our spiritual heritage, our belief in individual liberty.
The entire complex has been literally rebranded everywhere you go as an international symbol, with its importance specifically framed in terms of what it means to the whole world. While it's true these locations and the events that took place within them would have a profound effect on political thinking around the world in the centuries since, the idea of a national framework fundamentally important to American history seems almost tossed aside as an afterthought, an antiquated ideal in favor of the world's new global culture. Philadelphia visitors' sites refer to the Liberty Bell as an international symbol. Visit Philadelphia notes that even though the site is known as the birthplace of American democracy, it, quote, eventually gained its footing as a global leader of democratic ideals. The National Park Service also refers to the bell as an international symbol and even includes a lesson plan for school kids on Independence Hall, the international symbol of freedom, which discusses how the location was recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1979, a designation which testifies to how important Independence Hall is to the world's cultural heritage. For such an enduring symbol of freedom and liberty, security is so tight around Independence Park, it's gotta be on par with most courthouses and airports.
I've passed by there several times over the years before, haphazardly encountering unfriendly park police.
I saw him eyeing me, taking a picture.
At least twice, I recall being hounded by these intimidating authorities for daring to use a tripod on a sidewalk and also a grassy area in the direct view of Independence Hall, just as the Founding Fathers envisioned.
Why are private security guards keeping the people away from Independence Hall?
What's up?
Sir,
Don't touch my camera.
sir, you have
Don't
to...
touch my camera. Back away from me.
Let them go! Let them go!
We were doing nothing but peacefully speaking to other people in front of Independence Hall.
Why has this man been arrested? Is passing out flyers a crime?
These gentlemen have violated our constitutionally protected rights.
Who do you work for, ma'am? Interesting.
Can I see your ID, please? No, there's no need to see my ID. Okay. You come up to me with a bad attitude, and I didn't even see that sign.
I asked you to turn it off.
Well, why? Are you a public official?
I asked you to turn it off because we're having a discussion.
And that's the more of the reason to have it on. Okay?
Okay, now
you
you
touching
can
my
leave.
camera, too?
Now you can leave.
Your name and badge number, you are Carol, Lieutenant Carol. You're a lieutenant?
Leave,
And your
sir.
badge number
You're
is what?
trespassing.
So you're passing out flyers, and that's why you've been detained here.
Across from...
Is this a First Amendment free zone?
Apparently.
Stay on that side of the street.
Who do you work? Who do you work for?
This ain't America, baby.
Let me just show you where we were, or where we are. There's Independence Hall. I guess I got nothing more to say.
We're working on a project right now.
You should be embarrassed with yourselves having weapons against peaceful people, weapons against the people who pay you.
Today they've decided to treat us like cattle, and we've got all these park rangers here. I guess they'll be doing, you guys doing nature tours, or what are you guys doing here?
What are you teaching the kids? I don't understand this. Like today it's him, tomorrow it's us because we may say something and not agree with something someone else says. My children's great-grandfather was a signer. We came today to show our kids this, and our kids saw abuse.
What happens if I stay over on that side of the street?
You'll be arrested.
What is the charge if someone was standing over there after hours? If you cross the road, it's jaywalking.
Did they charge you with a crime?
Apparently, I was interfering with agency function and failure to obtain a permit.
Free speech in front of Independence Mall, in front of a statue of Thomas Jefferson, where our founders walked.
You handcuffed a couple of peaceful pamphleteers? Is this why you got involved in the Park Service, to arrest people for passing out flyers? You gonna go home and tell your kids about it?
These people came over, accosted us, told us we could not do this. We needed a permit to engage in free speech in America? The nerve! A permit to engage in free speech in America!
Watch my interview subject, a lawyer, argue with these drone bees about the existence of the First Amendment even at the park that is enshrining and preserving Independence Hall, where so much of this happened. Ironic, don't you think?
This is where our forefathers put life, liberty on the line to give us independence, to make the first truly free nation in world history. And we have hired goons keeping the public away. Well, folks, you going to do anything about your freedom? Because this is what it is.
I urge caution for those who might provoke these aggressive watchers who are serving the free and independent public via the National Park Service in the jurisdiction of the Department of the Interior branch of the executive, and ultimately under United Nations influence as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
After we went through the security tent at Independence Hall, where people were required to empty their pockets, take off their belts, and place all cameras and bags through a metal detector while we all got wanded.
We're ready to go through our checkpoints for the Independence Hall tour here in Philadelphia. Security checkpoint there.
Trade liberty for security, end up with neither.
Our first stop was a room lined with chairs and adorned with a large painting depicting the signing of the American Constitution, to welcome us to the historic building we were visiting that day. The entire introduction of the birthplace of America was explicitly couched in terms of its UNESCO designation and its importance not to the creation of a new nation, but to what it means to the world's culture.
This is the East Wing, our first stop. And here we talk about what led up to the two great events that make this building a World Heritage Site. And that means that it's a special designation by the United Nations, designating this location as really important for cultural reasons. What are the two great events that make this a World Heritage Site?
Let's see, a document declaring independence from an abusive government with too much power, and a document designed to restrain government and keep it from having too much power. Exactly the opposite of the United Nations and the scheme for global control over.
That's right, exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. See, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, protected us, the people, against criminal governments. The words were so worded, so good, they never needed changed. They've never needed changed. For years, they've put your puppet president in front of you when he was elected into office through fraudulent elections. For years, they pulled the wool over your eyes and gave you two sides, right, left, Democrat, Republican, when there was never two sides from the very beginning. There was only one. Them, the controllers, who controlled the government. Okay? And there's a long history story, but for all that's taken place, and people just don't wake up to the truth, there it is in your face, just like not long ago when I took Heather down to the IRS to prove that she was Heather for her income taxes. And I put a video up showing this and talking about this when I had a clown come along and say, when I said that there was no law, that the Supreme Courts had literally denied them from taking taxes from your labor, which is true, it's not a lie, and that there is no law. So this clown goes out and says, yes, there is, and I proved you wrong. It's the 16th Amendment. Amendment. What did you see in this here video? What did you see them talk about? What did I tell you for my comeback about amendment? See, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was wrote so good they didn't need approved. They never needed changed. This is the criminals conning you into believing that we could change to better. So what was the better? Oh, that's right. That we go ahead and change something that was flawless for our own selfish greed. To be able to steal. We change it so that we can put a gun to you and rob you. That's what we done. We allowed them to jump into the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and use a fancy word called amendment to change because they had to take an oath on the Constitution to come into office, which means technically you could take them out of office for violating that oath. So we created a scam, a lie, manipulation, so that we could rewrite the words of the Constitution, and we would call it an amendment for better for everybody. So taking taxes from your wages that doesn't build roadways, that's right, doesn't pay for medical, doesn't pay for police departments, doesn't pay for fire departments, that doesn't pay for anything in your country at all with infrastructure, nothing that goes back to the people whatsoever. That was betterment. That was to help us. No, that was to help a bunch of criminals line their pocket by stealing from you. See, total criminal behavior from criminals. Anybody that says, oh, yes, it is right here, it's an amendment. It's an amendment. It's the sound asleep at the wheel. Amendment stands for corruption. Amendment stands for we have destroyed your Constitution and your Bill of Rights. We have destroyed them right in your face, and you're too dumb to know what we're doing. That's what that stands for. But anyhow, I'm going to move on because there's a lot to get into here, so watch out.
The opposite of the United Nations and the scheme for global control over everyone.
The American Constitution was signed here in the same room. Declaration of Independence, declaring that separating from Great Britain based upon the fact that we could not have a government of the people to secure the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then in 1787, 11 years after that, we signed the Constitution, which is a document which helps to secure those rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness by creating a government of the people. So the two are related. The two great events are related. And that's what makes this a World Heritage Site and what makes Philadelphia the only city in the United States designated as a World Heritage City.
After the introduction, we were immediately shown the UNESCO plaque, officially designating the building as a World Heritage Site. It had been talked up so much that some people even posed for pictures with it. Only once we were made to fully understand the global importance of Independence Hall were we then shown the courtroom and the room where America's Bill of Rights and Constitution were signed. A constitution which our guide reminded us could still be made better today.
Constitution. In 4 months, they create a brand new government. It's the oldest written national constitution in the world. It says it can be amended. Amended. See, it starts out by saying, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish this Constitution for the United States. But it was a great start, and it said it can be amended, and it's been amended or changed 27 times since. And we can still make it better today.
The story of our nation's founding came complete with an interesting side note about how Benjamin Franklin spent hours during the proceedings staring at the back of President George Washington's chair, wondering if the sun on the chair was a rising sun or a setting sun.
That's George Washington's chair. So he sat in that chair for 4 months in 1787 as president of a convention to fix the government. Now Benjamin Franklin, my favorite founding father, was here for this too. So the day they signed this, on September 17, 1787, Benjamin Franklin was 81 years old, and he was was seated right about here, and he kept looking at the back of George Washington's chair, the president's chair. Now this is hard to see. So, at the park, they created this to show you what it looks like. Benjamin Franklin kept looking at this for 4 months or so, and he kept wondering whether the wood carving of the half sun on the back of the president's chair was a rising sun or was it a setting sun? I mean, Benjamin Franklin was a genius. I don't know. He kept thinking, is this rising? Is this sun rising or is it setting? What do you think he thought? That's right. Benjamin Franklin thought this was a rising sun because we have a new government. That's called the rising sun chair. And no one sits in that chair. You can sit in a replica in the visitor center, but you can't sit in the original George Washington's chair. Presidents who come here, from Abraham Lincoln, even the Pope was here recently. I don't believe anyone can sit in that chair.
On to the Liberty Bell Center, which had a similar security setup with signs letting us know that all persons and property on site are subject to search. There were even more security guards and yet another metal detector, ironically placed right underneath a sign declaring that we should proclaim liberty throughout the land unto the inhabitants thereof. The inscription on the Liberty Bell that comes from the Bible, a piece from Leviticus 25:10.
Proclaim liberty throughout the land. Submit to security.
Throughout the Liberty Bell Center, we were reminded that while the bell may be linked to important events in American history, it's actually a world symbol without national boundaries.
The Annenberg Foundation of your liberty. The Annenberg Foundation, they put Obama in office. Well, world symbol for liberty.
This bell has been linked to important events in American history, but increasingly it has become a symbol without national boundaries. The inscription on the bell is in English, but its words touch lives all around the world.
One plaque actually referred to the bell as a sacred relic and a useful symbol, which actually, if you think about it, is a little bit creepy. How they've used it to inspire patriotism or get people to buy national savings bonds. But this was one of the only places we noticed where it mentioned the bell as a cherished cornerstone of national identity. Even the trinkets that were sold at the souvenir shop are straying from the foundational principles established at this very location, like this t-shirt being sold in the Independence Visitor Center gift shop that says, "Freedom of speech is not a license to be stupid." A statement which is only semantically true, because this God-given human right is not a license at all. This pathetic joke of a shirt flies directly in the face of the spirit of the Bill of Rights. In an age where our liberty and freedom seems to be evaporating and challenged on every front as we move towards a global society, modern symbols abound at Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell Center. Not just the over-the-top presence of way too many security guards, which basically trample out any feelings of liberty you might have while you're visiting these places, but the intentionally instilled sense that the spirit of independence the United States once achieved has been replaced by a global theme of world culture, a world system.
To define I think that was...
These sites paid lip service to the popular slogans of freedom and liberty, but between the lines it was increasingly clear that these are fading, if not illusory, concepts in the new world order that has since been born.
There also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society.
During the U.S. bicentennial celebrations held throughout the mid-1970s, which were supposed to pay tribute to the important historical events that led up to the creation of the United States of America as an independent constitutional republic, some 124 members of our Congress gathered together at Congress Hall on the west side of Independence Hall, which was home to the U.S. Congress from 1790 to 1800, back when Philadelphia served as the temporary capital of the United States. This time they gathered to sign a new declaration, the Declaration of Interdependence, in January 1976. It opens,
when, in the course of history, the threat of extinction confronts mankind, it is necessary for the people of the United States to declare their interdependence with the people of all nations and to embrace those principles and build those institutions which will enable mankind to survive and civilization to flourish. 2 centuries ago, our forefathers brought forth a new nation. Now we must join with others to bring forth a new world order.
There's a need for a new world order.
A new world order.
A new world order.
We kept talking about a new world order.
The new world order.
A new world order.
Creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
it continues.
It is essential that mankind free itself from the limitations of national prejudice and acknowledge that the forces that unite it are incomparably deeper than those that divide it, that all people are part of one global community, dependent on one body of resources, bound together by the ties of a common humanity and associated in a common adventure on the planet Earth. Let us then join together to vindicate and realize this great truth, that mankind is one.
The document includes a number of affirmations, among them that
the resources of the globe are finite. They are the heritage of no one nation or generation,
and
narrow notions of national sovereignty must not be permitted to curtail the obligation to transmit to that posterity a planet richer in material bounty.
It affirms a moral obligation to strive for a more equitable sharing of the Earth's resources, and that every society is obliged to distribute those resources equitably, along with, quote,
a corollary obligation upon every society to assure that its population does not place upon nature a burden heavier than it can bear.
So it's an overpopulation message. It also affirms that America is required to
help build more effective machinery for keeping peace among nations.
And
the economy of all nations is a seamless web.
And
the institutions of science and the arts are never at war, and call upon all nations to exempt these institutions from the claims of chauvinistic nationalism. And yada 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 to strengthen and sustain the United Nations and other institutions of world order. Fine words for handing over sovereignty to a global body.
The document was appealing to all the people of the world to join in supporting the United Nations and creating an effective world government. Proposed by the World Affairs Council, other organizations involved included the International Peace Academy, members of Congress for Peace Through Law, and the Council on Foreign Relations. The document was also endorsed by a number of United Nations agencies and NGOs. There was no national news coverage of the event. Most people today think UNESCO's purpose mainly involves preserving major landmarks, but that's barely skimming the surface. In UNESCO's 1946 Philosophy and Purpose document, Brave New World author Aldous Huxley's brother Julian Huxley, who was the first Director General of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, openly called for a world government as a necessary requirement for further human evolution and progress. In order to achieve it, he discussed a quest for a world philosophy and a, quote, unified and unifying background of thought for the modern world.
Organization will, A, collaborate in the work of advancing the mutual knowledge and understanding of peoples through all means of mass communication, and to that end recommend such international agreements as may be necessary to promote the free flow of ideas by word and image. Give fresh impulse to popular education and the spread of to the spread of culture by suggesting educational methods best suited to prepare the children of the world for the responsibilities of...
Okay, now I want to thank Truths Media for that. As I said, I'm going to put the link in the more for you so that you can watch their entire video. Okay, now I'm going to lead you to further, well, as you just saw there. Okay, UNESCO. Education. UNESCO. Education. That's right. Remember, UNESCO is behind a lot of this, okay? But remember, this is all part of NWO, New World Order, through multiple agencies, multiple entities, from UNESCO to United Nations to corporations to media to school systems, everything. It's all linked together because they are controlling everything. And it's directly behind the war of the genders. It's directly the reason men are being male bashed through Hollywood 365 days a year. It's directly related to the women's behavior in today's society and the men's behavior. Our behaviors come from this. And some of what you're about to see is going to disgust you. It's going to piss you off. You know about this stuff and you're throwing yourself all over the place, but you're not understanding where it comes from. It's the same place Truth Media just showed you. So I'm going to further what UNESCO is behind. They are NWO, and they are behind a lot of stuff that you didn't even realize they're behind, including right up into the dating scene. No lie. With that, watch up, and hope you get something out of this. To the next one, y'all have a good one.
Think about if you personally yourself have ever heard anybody using a word that would make a gay person feel bad or that you think would be really hurtful to a gay person. And think about how it made you feel. Anna?
My brother's friend, I don't think he knew what it meant, but he just said to my brother, "You're a faggot." Mm-hmm. And I didn't really know what it meant because I was young. Mm-hmm. But then my brother told me, and I felt really bad for the people that I knew that were gay, mm-hmm. because there was somebody just down the, two people that lived down the road that were lesbians.
I've had a lot of experiences. Mm-hmm. At this school, a lot, like fag and faggot has been used
At this school?
Yeah, and it's amazing how teachers, no offense, but it's amazing how teachers don't notice all the stuff that's going on, and even like, they don't necessarily use the word fag, but they say, oh, what are you, gay or something like that. And it's really, it makes you feel like weird in your stomach.
Okay, so that's great you brought that out. Julia?
Get to it, okay? The book is called Asha's Moms, or Mums, really.
Okay, we'll take comments and questions at the end of the story. Here we go. Asha's Moms. My class has been talking all week about the trip we're going to take to the Science Center.
Some of the children, like Terrence and Elsie, have already been there. My teacher, Miss Samuels, gave us a form to take home. Our parents had to fill it out and sign it so that we would have permission to go on the trip. I gave it back to her the next day. Just before break, she asked to see me. She wanted to know which of the names on the form was my mom's.
I said both. It can't be both. You can't have two moms, she said briskly. But I do. My brother and I have two moms, I protested. Corrine and Judy were listening to me.
Take the form back home and have it properly filled out, said Miss Samuels. You can't go on the trip if it isn't. Now, if you were Asha, how do you think you would feel? Why is that, Jamila?
Because they said you couldn't have two moms.
Because the teacher said you couldn't have two moms?
Isaac? Well, our teacher probably didn't knowledge, wasn't very open-minded.
Feminist movements is usually divided into three so-called waves. The first wave focused on de jure, officially mandated inequalities, which focused in particular on increased political rights. One of the key texts which shaped first wave feminism was Mary Wollstonecraft's 1792 A Vindication of the Rights of Women. The movement reached its culmination with the rise of the women's suffrage movement of the early 20th century, which demanded women be given the right to vote. The second wave was associated with the demands of the women's liberation movement starting around the 1960s and campaigned against de facto, unofficial inequalities. It focused particularly on legal and social equality for women, concentrating on issues such as equality in the workplace, reproductive rights and divorce law. The third wave, emerging in the 1990s, seeks to address what it considers the essentialism of second wave feminism and its emphasis on upper middle class white women. Its focus is more disparate than the previous two waves, concentrating on issues such as gender violence and the reclamation of derogatory terms.
We'll be holding a class called Male Melancholia, Crisis Masculinity, which focuses on the fall of white masculinity. Masha Tupitsin is a professor of film and gender studies who teaches the course, and she joins me now. All right, Professor, what is toxic masculinity, first of all?
I mean, I would say there are different ways to describe it, but the way that I refer to it is to think about toxic masculinity as when masculinity has to kind of abuse its power in order to function.
How would I demonstrate on a day-to-day basis toxic masculinity?
Well, I mean, I think that's a complicated question, but on a daily basis it would be in your relationships with other people, in your relationships with women in the workplace, and the way that you relate to your own power in the workplace.
Just by being a jerk and offensive and imposing my will on other people.
Yeah, or even negotiating that imposition of will on other people, right? This idea that you have to kind of stoke my ego or behave a certain way to get ahead.
Okay, so white masculinity is now a problem. There's a downfall among white males. How so?
Well, I'm not saying that there's a downfall. I don't think there's a loss of power, although men are always lamenting their loss of power.
How are we doing that?
Well, this constant idea, even someone like President Trump, who's always lamenting sort of the good old days, or a show like Mad Men, which is always focusing on this kind of loss of supremacy that men once held. So that narrative has been going on.
So when Donald Trump says, make America great again, what is he trying to say? That we want to return to the good old days where white men ruled the earth?
Yeah, and still rule the earth. But that's being destabilized, and so there's this constant kind of narrative of mourning and loss about what's been lost. But what really needs to happen...
But couldn't the president just be saying, well, I want to go back to the 80s, where the economy was roaring and we were doing great?
And when he was the king.
I mean, couldn't that be what he's saying? Maybe not.
But either way, it's self-referential.
White males, maybe more about let's go back to when America was strong and powerful and the economy was great.
And it was a patriarchy that no one questioned.
But is he saying there was a patriarchy that no one questioned?
But
or
no
is
one
that
has
something
to
you're
say
saying?
that. I think there isn't any debate anymore whether sexism is real. I think even the disbelievers are now believers.
So you think when Trump says, make America great again, he wants to go back to the time when sexism was good?
Well, when it was good, and it certainly wasn't questioned, and people were afraid to question it.
But how do you know that?
Let me just finish. So part of what I think is important about the Me Too movement or the Time's Up movement is that it's making everyone question what the effects of masculinity have been, right? It's making everyone have that conversation and to think about how that, how sexism has been totally normalized just on an everyday level.
But how do you know, though? Because you don't know.
Well, I am a woman, and sexism is part of the daily fabric of all women's lives.
Okay, but you don't know when Trump says make America great again, he's talking about wanting to bring back
sexism. Now we're having a conversation
sexism.
about mind reading as opposed to interpretation.
No, but you brought up that he wanted to go back to those days.
Because these are very old narratives, and they don't just refer to national politics. National politics also consists of race and class and gender. It's a kind of package deal, right? When you're talking about nation building, you're talking about a lot of other multidimensional things.
Okay, well, listen, I did not take that from what the president said when he uses that slogan. I guess you're interpreting it.
So I didn't come here just to discuss his slogan.
Right. So what do white men need to do in America now? How can we improve, in your opinion?
Well, to me, the crisis is really about this lack of responsibility and this lack of self-interrogation, right? That's really what, I mean, etymologically, the root of crisis means this point at which change must come.
But what do you mean?
So either the change can come or it won't, but what needs to happen is that men start doing some of the work and interrogation around masculinity as opposed to all these other sort of special interest groups.
Okay,
like
so let's just take it step by step. I'm a man. I'm a white man. What do I need to ask myself, or what do I need to address internally about my white male?
Well, I would say two things to start with. So one is, what kind of privileges have I inherited because of my whiteness and my straight masculinity, let's say?
White privilege.
White privilege, but it also has to do with masculinity. So I would ask, and we all have to ask that question, what privileges do we come in the world with, and do we abuse those privileges?
Okay, so you want white men, I'll just take a step back. You want white men to recognize that they have certain advantages by being born a white straight male.
Yes, that they use.
And they want, and you and I, as a white straight male, should be more conscious of my privileges when I go walk around in everyday society.
You should be, but most likely you won't be because you don't have to. I mean, that's sort of the argument that I'm making. Most people are only conscious because they're disenfranchised in some way, right? So they're aware of how the dominant power works and how their own lives function. And people who have dominant power don't have to ask those questions. Okay. So the questions that men have to ask themselves are the same questions that all kind of people that are struggling for consciousness and liberation and justice need to ask so that the world can be better for everyone.
What about a guy in Minnesota who's making, you know, $20 an hour, his really tough job, he's got a family he's trying to support, and the economy's not working for him and things are tough. How does he have white privilege?
Well, you didn't specify that he is white,
well,
so I don't know that he has white privilege. He still is even if he doesn't have economic privilege, right?
He still has racial privilege.
He still has racial privilege. Okay. He still has masculine privilege. He can walk into a bar, right, and behave a certain way because he's a man, that he might not be able to walk into his job and behave that way, right? We all can negotiate power in different ways. So just because you're not powerful in one setting, you can still be powerful and privileged in another
when I walk into
setting.
A bar as a straight white male, Am I being too confident when I walk into the bar?
Well,
should
again, I don't know
should
how
I
you
go
are
in
when
a
you
more
walk into
humble
a
way?
bar. I just know that men can behave a certain way in public settings and in bars that is different from women. I mean, this is the case for everyone, right? There are codes that we're all following. Even if we just go to work and we don't behave a certain
Like I
way,
can
we
be
can get
loud
fired.
and obnoxious, and I can buy people
sexually
drinks, and I
aggressive.
can flirt with people. Is
Right.
that what you're saying? And
you
women
might
can't
not-
do that?
Well, they might do it, but they pay a different price for that.
Okay.
Even just on the level of, you might not be seen as someone desperate if you're a single man that walks into a bar.
Right.
Whereas if a woman walks into a bar and she's single, that is perceived as a very different kind of social gesture.
Okay. And then lastly,
So there
what
are
was the
consequences
other
for that.
question I'm supposed to ask myself as a straight white man?
Well, you've interrupted me so many times and now I can't remember.